Doug, have you got your hand
Anyway,
up because you want to show us some work as well?
yeah, I do have a bunch of urns here, Jim. John, you mentioned about the idea of burial urns, and I had done
Okay,
a bunch of them. So I can share my screen
let's
now if
start
you
with
want
you.
to.
You share your screen, and Bowman will spotlight you as Nito. You don't have to spotlight him if he's sharing screen.
So a number of years ago, a good friend of Jim and I's died, and I made a cherry urn for his ashes for the funeral. This is as far as I know, this is the only urn I've ever made that I actually use.
Now
That's
that's a very close copy of an Egyptian Coptic jar, which they used for people's organs after they were dead.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is. Anyway, that's
Did
that.
you know that at the time? Were you looking at Coptic urns?
No, I wasn't actually. I was just sort of making an urn that would work. So, anyway, that was the urn, and then and cherry happened to be Roland's favorite wood, so that's what happened. I also made another one here. This is a piece of wood I did with trying to make segmenting with walnut and plywood, in which I did an off-center urn, and I've made a few other ones. This one's a purple heart and walnut or dyed walnut at the top. This one was another piece of cherry where I had a chainsaw cut in the side of it, and rather than throw it out, I highlighted it with putting some epoxy into the chainsaw cut, and that's the last of them.
Doug, how do you know how big they are inside?
I actually I actually measure it by using some glass beads, and I pour the glass beads into the urn and see how many I've got, and that way I can check the volume of it. So, it's just a matter of saying if you want a quart or 2 quarts, put 2 quarts of glass beads and hollow it out until it's full. So, and I've also...
That's
Sorry,
interesting, Doug. I usually use rice when I'm trying to figure out the volume for when I'm pouring epoxy, because it's so blooming expensive. You don't want to use any more ounces than you need. But glass beads are interesting.
I usually use water in a measuring cup.
Well, the reason for not using water is it soaks into the edge. So I was just not using that. And the glass beads was like, I didn't think of using rice, but they're big enough that they roll in and out quite easily. Just any marbles or something like that. And the rule of thumb is always like 1 cubic inch per pound of body weight or something along that line. That was just some urn stuff I've been done in the past. I haven't done it in a while. The problem I had was that I tried to sell them at the funeral homes and stuff like that, and they wouldn't even return my call. It's like, or it wouldn't even whatever. So unless you've got some friend or something that you can get something in there, it's pretty hard to find an outlet for them. And it's not that it's hard to find an outlet for them, and it's that the funeral homes can go in and buy these things up by the dozen made in China, and that's what they tend to do,
Yeah.
Or off of Etsy.
Yeah.
Now, has anybody else got urns they'd like to show today? I realize it's a very personal subject, and I understand if you don't want to show, but if you are willing to, I would sure like to see more urns. I see Michael Brazeau there. Let's go there. What do you got, Michael? Okay.
I mentioned earlier about making the one for my sister, and I made a sketch on 1/4-inch graph paper. Hers is turning out a little different because of the wood that I ended up with. What I did is just did a radius measurement going down from the top to the bottom, and set up a spreadsheet, pi r squared, and just used a 1/4-inch or a 1/2 inch increment, forgetting about rounding effects. If my calculus was better, I would use that, I guess. But anyway, you can come up with an estimate from a sketch, because the shape is pretty easy to sketch out. It's not very, there's not a whole lot of movement to it. It's kind of like whatever. I've been going to write it up, and I just never get around to it. It's going to be curious. I'm going to take the one that I've made. I've got some rye grain I used when seeding a lawn at the cottage that I'm going to use to measure the volume of it. It's going to be way more than she needs, but I'm curious to see how it works out. But there's all kinds of these discussions that go on about the volume. It's an easy way to start with a predetermined, sketch, and then turn. And your wall thickness is going to be you know, a third, 3/8, half, or whatever, and
So are you-
work it into the equation.
Are you going to give us that math that we can share with the group, Nick?
Yeah, I could. I've got it sketched out. It's just done in a pencil sketch, but yeah, I could do that.
If you get it over to me, I'll put it in the follow-up.
Okay.
Okay, I'm going to go back to gallery view here. I don't see any spotlights on. Anybody else? Anything they want to add to the urn discussion or urns they'd like to show? I see Earl Bartell waving his arm. Earl, we're going to go to you now. Jim, I'm going to spotlight him because it's easy for me. I found him.
Yeah, I built a to measure. I go with the rice also, but I took a 12-inch long, 5-inch inside diameter clear plastic. I can't remember what it was. But anyway, the plastic. I just made a piece of MDF and put a groove in it. Stuck a you know, you can get the tape measures that are stick-on, and I put the stick-on measure in there. In the so in a 5-inch diameter, 1 inch high would be 20 pounds approximately of thing. Fill your urn up with the rice, pour it in the measure, measure where the rice comes up to, then I can just pour the rice back into the jar that I keep it in, and that's how I do it. So just it's a little kind of an expensive way, that tube of clear plastic. There, it's pricey, but you can get it on Amazon. Not a big deal. Thank you.
Have you got any urns to show?
No, I do, but no, not here. They're in the house. They're in the because I do sell at the craft shows and, you know, things like that. And a lot of people, you know, it's legacy urns or keepsake urns, that sort of thing. Pets, you know, that kind of thing. So unfortunately, I don't have anything out here in the shop.
Okay. Anybody else with urns? I saw Bert has him beside him up there. We saw his urns last week. Bert, you got more to say about them?
I was just going to make a comment on the measuring. I didn't have to buy the poly tube. I just made one out of plywood and put a groove on one side and slid a piece of Lexan down one side. And so then you fill it up. I use plastic pellets. So you fill it up with plastic pellets, dump it in the measuring thing, and this one here is 275 cubic inches, so a pretty hefty person can fit in there.
So you
But
put the volume. You engrave the volume right into the lid, underside of the lid, do you?
Well, I did because I can never remember. I've got a good memory. It's just really short.
What?
But the comment is the square box is 5 by 5 on the inside. And if it's a 5 by 5 on the inside, and I got 1 inch graduations all the way up. So the box measuring thing, I think, goes up to about 300 cubic inches. So this is a pretty big urn. And the plastic pellets are relatively cheap. I think they cost me like $10. The plywood was scrap in the shop, and I had a scrap piece of Lexan. And yeah, and it just sits there in a corner, and I use it. And the pellets never get wet, even if they get wet, it doesn't hurt them. They don't start to grow. Like I was thinking of using rice, but I was worried about humidity, and the rice might start to grow. Anyway, that's what I had for urns.
Very good.
Yep.
Okay, anybody else on the urns discussion? Anybody, I see any more waving hands?
Angelo had a question.
Who's
Yeah, I
that?
have a question.
Who's that?
Angelo here.
Hello, Angelo.
Hi, John. I see these urns that are being made, and my question is, how do you size the urn to fit in a funerary crypt and still maintain the volume that you need for, say, a 200-pound person?
We had the dimensions last week of what the crypts are. We had Mike Peace pulled them up from the VA site, the dimensions of the crypts that are used in the military cemeteries. That's one part of the equation. Does that help you? I can find that. I can send you that link.
I have a double crypt, and it's 11 by 11 by 16 inches. So how do you make are you making these vases to fit in a crypt, or are these freeform?
Some are making them to fit in the crypt and some are not, is what it amounts to, I think.
Oh, I see.
That sounds like maybe something you better check before you make it for some particular individual.
I did check one time and they said as long as you stay inside 12 by 12 by 12, it'll be no problem. Some of them are like 16 inches or 18 inches. But I just did a quick calculation, 12 by 12 by 12, that equals 1,728 cubic inches. So anything less than 12 by 12 by 12 will fit in one of them funerary crypt or whatever, the little cubicles. And that's more than enough to hold a pretty big person.
Is that a Canadian dimension or is that a North American dimension, or do you know?
I'm not sure. I checked locally, and that's when I made the call, and they just said, you know, they vary. Whoever, I can't remember who I talked to, and they said they do vary. But if you say inside 12 by 12 by 12, it'll fit. And then if you have a specific place, then phone that place and they'll tell you how big their areas are. But I was just going on the size of how many ashes, how many cubic inches of ashes you need to put in one. So you'd make an urn big enough for the ashes and it'll definitely fit.
That help you, Angelo?
No.
No. Well, it's a phone call or email the place where you're actually planning on doing it, or a couple of them. Just
well, let's find out what is actually.
Crypt is 11 by 11 by 16 inches, so I can't make anything bigger than 11 inches cubed.
There you go. Yeah. Yeah. So like I said, they're all different. But...
Well, that ought to be enough for you, anyhow.
Yeah, Angelo, is the 11 inches by 11 inches the 16 inches the height, or is that a width?
The height, the depth, and the length of the crypt is 16 inches. It's fit for 2 people. So
Okay.
my problem is to get 200 cubic inches in a circular turned vase that'll fit in an 11-inch tall opening with enough room to spare so that people can get it in and out. I can show you the sketches at some other time, but I don't know. I'm not real confident about the fit.
Okay, I'll do some calculations and let you know.
Okay, I'm going to have to move it along. Anybody else on this discussion before we go to a different topic? Barry, you on this discussion?
So when I was listening here, I Googled urn calculation or human remains cremated. And there's a website that actually has a little spreadsheet. You put in the person's weight and it tells you how many cups and how many cubic inches of volume would be required. And this particular website is mainlyurns.com, where Maine is spelled like the state of Maine. MAINELYURNS. And it's very straightforward. You just put the person's weight in.
Okay.
John, if the crypt is 11 by 11 by 16 and 2 people go in there, you got to make the thing fit in 11 by 11 by 8, right?
Yeah, and the answer is that if you have a 11 by 11 by, if you have an 8-inch diameter vessel with a half-inch sidewall, which means it's 7-inch inside diameter, the inside has, that's a 38 square inches. So like 10 inches tall is like 380 pounds. So an 8-inch diameter vessel by 10 inches tall should have more than enough space. It's just a matter of how much you shape it, Angelo. So
Well, if the hole you're going to put it in is 11 by 11 by 8,
yeah,
make it fit that.
No, I meant the shape of the vessel.
Yeah,
if you want
yeah.
a fancy shape, but that's a perfect cylinder.
Well, Michael's got something he's trying to show us. So
Yeah, I don't. I'll scan this and send it to you. But this is how I started out doing this sketch. And I have a calculation. This was 8.5 inches internal height. So it was about 7 inches internally at the widest point. And if I added an inch to the height, that added 20 cubic inches. So it's really, you could, if you got more into a rounded, you can increase the volume substantially, but it's very easy to do.
I'll send that out. If you send it to me, I'll send it out.
Yeah, I'll send it to you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good. Let's get back to gallery view and either and see who else is anybody else in this discussion. Any more to say here, or should we go to the next topic?
On a lighter note, this conversation sounds like how tall shall you make wine stoppers so that they still fit in the refrigerator shelf?
Yeah, it's going to be a little bit to everybody's individual situation and where the urn is going to go. That's for sure. Yeah. Wood shop.